So this is a dry fit of the fiberglass tube. It's a filament wound fiberglass tube, sanded inside and outside, and it's 1 5/8 inch inside diameter, and the wall thickness is 0.053 inches, I think. So it's just under 1 3/4 inches diameter in the outside diameter. And the reason I got 1 5/8 inside diameter is I plan on using a 1 1/8 inch diameter prop shaft. And so that gives me basically a 1/4 inch of space around the prop shaft as compared to the inside diameter of the prop shaft hole with this fiberglass tube. So here's a close-up of the prop shaft hole. I sealed it and encapsulated it. So I sealed it with 2 coats of CPES first, and of course let those cure in between, and then I encapsulated it with 1 coat of silver tip epoxy. It's a seam epoxy that I encapsulated the bottom, and then I'll be using for fiberglassing. So this is in preparation for epoxying in the fiberglass prop shaft hole, the tube. I'm going to use the fiberglass tube for that. I just got the fiberglass tube epoxied in my prop shaft hole. So I used thickened epoxy, kind of several different levels of thickness. I went ahead and used the silver tip epoxy again because that's what I've been using. I encapsulated the boat with it. So I did kind of a thinner consistency of this epoxy first and kind of coated the inside of the hole, and then I thickened it some more, and then I coated the outside of the tube and then kind of stuck it in there and out, and it's still pretty thin, so I thickened it some more, and that's what I ended up with. It was pretty thick, and then when I put it in the hole, I twisted it and help it get coated in there good. And then what I did is I used this the same steel rod that I used to drill the hole with, and I have the actually chuck. You can't see it because it's covered with tape. Just basically to help hold that tube in the center. It mostly is. It just had to be held up. I mean, pretty much it was centered, but I just used that to make sure it was fairly, centered as much as possible. And then underneath, I put a clamp in to hold it because the tube was wanting to kind of slip down. As the epoxy sets up, it gets warmer and it gets a little thinner. So I put that just to make sure it wouldn't slide down, even though I have it taped here. So that's what it looks like. And then I made sure I had quite a bit of nice bead of thickened epoxy around here. And then once that sets up, of course, before fiberglass, I'll be trimming this off flush with the hull and sanding this all again so it's flush. So I may have to do a little more epoxy sealer around if I get to bare wood there as I'm doing that. But it's set in there nicely now, and so we'll see how it looks once it cures. So here I'm showing where I'm starting to trim and sand off that fiberglass tube, and so I rough cut this. I think I used my Japanese pole saw carefully, and then I might have tried my hacksaw too, but anyway, just to get it close. So here I am partway there, and this shows what I did is I used my hand belt sander carefully to get it down flush to the bottom, and you can see obviously I caught the bottom a little bit there, and you can see these little bubbles and things. I think what happened was after I encapsulated the bottom of the boat, I took some CPES like I mentioned before, and I think when I did that it just splattered a little bit, even though I was real careful about this, because the bottom, when I used the CPS on inside of this, the bottom was still a little, was wet. It wasn't cured yet. and so it caused this to happen. And I'll show later I did reseal that, and I'll show that here in a minute. So here I've got it sanded flush, and I already used some CPS on those spots where I hit with a sander. And something that's a little hard to see here, I had some low spots in here where the epoxy around that tube wasn't quite flush. It kind of was down a little bit, so I did fill that in with some of this thickened epoxy. And this is just showing a side view of what it's starting to look like. Obviously I haven't, I'm not done yet. I haven't re-encapsulated yet. And then this picture shows after I filled in, you can see there the low spot, you can see where this is a little lighter color, and up in here, and kind of on this edge too, I did a little bit. And then carefully sanded that flush after that cured. And then this is after I've re-encapsulated this whole area to cover up kind of where those little spots had formed. So now the prop shaft hole is ready.